All right, joining us now from Abuja is the Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs of the National House of Representatives,
yes,
Abdulrasaq Namdas. Honorable member, good morning, you're welcome to the program right now.
Good morning, thank you so much.
All right. Now, let me start it this way. It is a good thing that the National Assembly has decided to at least give details, rough details of allocation to the National Assembly. But is this a response to the people's yearnings all the while? Maybe some kind of pressure on the National Assembly to make these things open?
No, I think there is no pressure from any quarter. If you could remember, the Speaker actually directed the CNA to please release details of our earnings in the National Assembly. And we promised that by the time we pass the 2017 budget, that will be done. And we have kept our promise by way of releasing the details. And we are doing that so the Nigerians should be able to know. Sometimes what people hear or listens on radio stations or read in newspapers are not actually true. So I think we've just done our part to keep to the promise of being transparent and assuring Nigerians that we will continue to work together.
All right. Of course, President Buhari laid this budget before the National Assembly as far back as December of 2016. Why did it take this long for the budget to be approved?
I think, first of all, we need to appreciate the fact that by presenting the budget on December 14th, 2016, it's already a late decision. Because the legislature do not write budgets. It is the executive that will write the estimates and proposals and send it to the National Assembly for us to work on. So we cannot do the job of the executive. It is only when the thing comes to the National Assembly we worked on it. And we are always confronted with two issues. If the budget is presented in December and we pass it in January, Nigerians will come back and say, look, these gentlemen are just rubber stamp. They have not even scrutinized the budget. They didn't even look at it. And now when we scrutinize the budget to try to see what we can be able to do, people say, look, you have delayed. I think it is important for us to take our time and scrutinize this budget. So long as it will be in the interest of Nigeria, it will reject the economy, it will ensure that we will get out of recession. That is more important. I think it is not our fault. We have done, and we have been meeting with the Vice President, our leadership in the National Assembly, both the House of Representatives and that of the Senate. Have been meeting with the Vice President, the now acting President, to see that priority areas of government are carried upon, and we have achieved that. I think you can see that nobody is complaining because we have made adequate consultations and have even made a public hearing for the first time in the history of the National Assembly. And that is good for all of us.
All right, Honorable, the lawmakers, you jacked up the executive estimates from 115 billion naira to about 125 billion. Can you give us one of the reasons or some of the reasons why that was done?
Yes, for you to give an adequate budgeting, we have to have a revenue base, and we were inundated with requests from ministries and agencies for more funding, and we discovered that for you to give adequate budget and funding, we need to also have sources of revenue, and we decided to increase $2 on the benchmark that was brought by the president when what they presented was $42.50 per barrel. Now we increase it to 44.50 per barrel as the crude oil price. Now, that gave us an additional 143 billion as an excess. And therefore, that is what we use to put in the Niger Delta about 10 billion so that there will be no more crisis in the Niger Delta. So we can be able to produce the 2.2 million barrels of crude oil per day, which has been estimated. We should be able to have our federal roads. The infrastructure is demanding attention. That has also been done. So these are issues we've done it in a response to get Nigeria out of the recession. And I think it is a good decision because you have to spend more to able to get out of this recession. And by the grace of God, I think we are almost there. And that is the reason why we'll be able to increase the budget from 7.2 trillion to 7.4 trillion.
Yes, indeed. And this budget has been tagged a budget of recovery and growth. Now, this $44.5 for benchmark for crude oil, and of course the 305 to the dollar exchange rate. Some experts are already saying that this particular projection may be ambitious. There are no guarantees that you would not have this volatile situation as far as crude oil is concerned. How realistic really is this budget? Of course, it's on the one hand, it looks good on paper, like some would say, but implementation, how are you going to ensure that this budget is implemented, knowing that 2016 budget was only 40% implemented?
I think the first thing we did is that the Speaker actually did appeal to the executive that there is need for us now to have this budget to be presented at the right time. For example, if we can have this budget presented 3 months before December, we will be in a position to work on this budget before the next year. And if that is done from the part of the executive, we can all move forward. And again, we have decided to do this budget. We believe that we will be able to get to the right destination. It's not just a matter of being on paper. If you look at the prices of the crude oil in the international oil market, for now it shows that we can be able to get what we have actually projected. And in as much as we have been able to carry the Niger Delta youth along to ensure that their decision is being taken over, their interest is carried on, and these issues of pipeline vandalization will actually also reduce. So the 2.2 million barrels per day that we are projecting to produce on a daily basis, we'll be able to have close to that or have that figure. And that will be getting revenue for us, and we'll be able to apply it to the necessary sectors of the economy that we've been planning to get. I think it is a very good decision, and both the media and the civil society to help us to realize this very laudable effort of ours.
Now, Honorable Member, looking at the breakdown of the budget as much as we can, the UBE, the Universal Basic Education, gets $95.2 billion, and that's much lower than what the National Assembly is getting, 125 billion naira. Are you saying that the job or the responsibilities of the National Assembly far outweigh the need to provide basic education to Nigerians?
I think basic education is an aspect of the entire education. We also have that one of higher education. I think we should not only single out basic education as the entire money for education. We have basic education, we have higher education. And in the National Assembly, I think that is something that people need to understand. We have only increased it by 10 billion naira. Before I came into the National Assembly, the budget of the National Assembly used to be 150 billion. And at the exchange rate of probably about 197 naira at that time. Now, even if we had retained 150 billion in 2017, it has actually dropped because we have to take into account the exchange rate. But now, we have, it has dropped from 150 to 130 to 115 back to 125. It still shows that the exchange rate, even officially as I talk to you, is 305 to $1. If you go to the parallel market, it's even 380 or something like that. So I watch that. It is still below the expected level. If you go to the National Assembly, public hearings deserves money. If you go to almost all the hearing rooms, we don't even have maintenance there. So I think it is not about it. It is for us to do the service to Nigeria, and we should do it diligently. We have a very big building to maintain. And this is a serious matter that has to be taken forward. If you look at other parastatals of government, check what is NNPC having. Check other parastatals and see some parastatals get more than even the institution and an arm of government. If you look at the budget, I think we have been credibly doing well.
All right. Honorable Namdas, it's good to give us this perspective as to how much more needs to be done and how much money is needed for the National Assembly to carry out its responsibility. But in considering the specifics, you've been able to raise the budgetary allocation to the National Assembly. Nigerians are very concerned about the minimum wage, which the National Assembly was even talking about putting. We've heard reports from the leadership of the National Assembly, the upper and lower house, saying it should be pegged about 50,000 naira. What is the arrangement for the budget or arrangement of the national or conclusion of the National Assembly towards raising the minimum wage?
So I think the issue of raising the minimum wage is a concern to all of us, and that is why we said that once that decision is reached, we will give the support to ensure that the minimum wage is raised, because by all standard, 18,000 to a civil servant at this critical period is definitely low. But that is something that is not a decision for only the National Assembly to jack off. It's a decision between both the National Assembly and the executive to try to work together to see. So anytime we are approached, we are on the side of the workers to see that how we can be able to look at funding and then try to be on the side of workers and increase their wages.
Okay, Honorable Namdas, I would like you to hold on for us a bit as we take a look at the newspaper headlines, and Wendy Agbo will be doing that right here in Lagos. Stay with us, please. Since we're not able to connect with Wendy Agbo, let's come back to Honorable Namdas House Committee on Media and Public Affairs. And now still talking about the budget of the National Assembly, I'm sure you'll be wondering why we seem to be fixated on that. You said there's a need for the National Assembly to actually expand its budget, but the perception, the general perception is that the National Assembly of Nigeria earns more than any elsewhere in the world. And like my colleague Mike said, there's the issue of the minimum wage for workers that seems not to be looked at seriously.
No, I think these are sweeping statements that is not backed by facts, that we earn more than any other legislator in the world. For one, I want to tell you that I am a member of the Pan-African Parliament. So I am, and I remember every National Assembly sends 5 people to the Pan-African Parliament. I am one of those 5 people. We sit in South Africa. As I speak to you now, tomorrow I'm supposed to be going to South Africa to continue with our job as Pan-African parliamentarians. I have had cause to sit down with parliamentarians in other parts of Africa, about all these 54 countries in Africa. We have discovered that in fact, we are even disadvantaged. If you go to Kenya, you discover that people in Nigeria will tell you that they don't want us to have constituency project. If you go to Kenya, Kenya have what is called constituency fund, which is even in their constitution. It's not just even a mere statement. But here in Nigeria, a lot of people tell us that this is not our job. So in comparative time, what we've been able to do is that we are doing very well in Africa and elsewhere in the world. So our salaries in Umilens are not far as people are alleging, because I'm a member of the African Parliament and I know that what people are saying is not true. We thank Nigerians for taking initiative to look at the earnings of the National Parliament. But I want to tell you that 125 billion naira is equivalent to just 2% of the national budget. So if people will look at the budget of other sectors and scrutinize what happens to other sectors, they will realize that we have done creditably well.
All right, but the Kenya you just talked about has raised minimum wage, or at least it has announced that. Well, capital expenditure in this 2017 budget is still slightly lower than recurrent expenditure. One would think that for an economy that wants to diversify and close the infrastructure gap, capital expenditure would be a lot more than recurrent.
I quite agree with you that we need the capital expenditure to be more. But if you look at what is happening in this present regime, even the capital expenditure in the 2017 budget is even higher than what happens in 2016. And because we also take loans from other sources, by the time we exit some of these loans, I can tell you that by next year, the capital expenditure should rise. In fact, we need to have a capital budget of close to about 40 or 50%. That I agree with you. But it's something that we will have to get there slow and steady. It is not just our problem, because you cannot just drop the recurrent expenditure just like that. And I believe that with time we will be able to get there. And implementation of budgets is not implemented by the legislature, it's implemented by the executive. Of course, we have the right to do oversight functions to realize how far it has gone. But I quite agree with you that we need to do more, and we will do more in that regard.
All right, Abdulrasaq Namdas, Honorable. We are short for time, so I'm going to end it up here now. But I know we're going to be talking about this in the coming days,
Definitely.
even with you and other members of the House. Honorable Abdulrasaq Namdas, Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs. Thank you very much for talking to us on TVC Breakfast.